All right, looks like we have a pretty big crowd. About 29 folks are on the call, so we can get started. I am going to share my screen in a moment, but just to let you know who's on the call right now that will be presenting today. I'm Alice Minervino from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And I have two colleagues from the Corporation for Supportive Housing. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Luz, if you could go next.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Luz Osuba, and I am the Senior Program Manager at CSH. Welcome, everyone. And I have my colleague Kaya, who is on commute, and she usually runs these trainings. So my apologies, but she will be joining us shortly. So just as a reminder, just as I'm sure you all are aware, the Zoom buttons on your bottom, you can enter information on the chat just by opening up the chat room. And if you can mute and unmute until you can you to speak, that way it will eliminate the background sound and it will allow the presenter to present the information. Thank you.
So just a quick couple of slides to look at that. Thank you, Luz. For those of you who are here at the training today, we are going to be discussing using the Supportive Housing Assessment and Acuity Index. So if you think that you're supposed to be at a different training, you can maybe stay and learn some stuff about the Housing Assessment and Acuity Index, or you can hang up and go to the training you're supposed to be at. I know there's a lot of online things happening, and sometimes we end up in not the right space. So as I said, I'm Alice Minervino. I'm from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'm so happy that you've all decided to join us on a really very sunny and beautiful Monday morning. I know it can be tough to get ourselves motivated, especially on a Monday, but so I thank you all for being here. I will go over the training. It's going to be about 2 hours. I say about because I generally do like to try and have folks get a few minutes in between meetings and things that they have to do. So I'm trying to, hopefully we'll end a little bit early so you have a few minutes to yourself for anything you might need to do to prepare yourself for the next meeting or drive somewhere or whatever you all have to do this afternoon. So today's objectives are that we're going to familiarize each of you with the sections of the assessment and acuity, so it's clear why we use the tool. Describe how the assessment and the acuity work together, also that they work together with service planning. Discuss how these tools will help develop a comprehensive service plan. We'll talk about how to administer the assessment and acuity, and we'll talk a little bit about some updates that have happened within the last year or so. So before I move to the next slide, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put the questions in chat. That would be great.
I'm sorry, are we getting a copy of this PowerPoint at the end or no? Or
yep. Kaya, usually after the trainings, you'll get your certificate of attendance and the PowerPoint from the training today. Okay, hearing no other questions, I'm going to move on. So the assessment and acuity, we can do a quick overview. The assessment is like any other assessment you guys have done, is this set of specific questions, and it helps to provide the story of the tenant that they can tell us. We identify strengths, skills, and supports, as well as areas for that might need some assistance, some direction. And the assessment allows you to get some information that you can also use when filling out the Acuity Index. So, the assessment is really kind of the history and some storytelling on the part of the tenant, and really will help you build relationships and help with putting into the Acuity Index. The Acuity Index is a set of like a scale of where people are, where they have where they have areas of growth, and where they're, kind of doing okay. And it helps identify level of functioning and service need. So it's really driven by the needs of the tenant, not necessarily any outside influence. So it's really about the needs that the tenant has. So why is this important? The assessment starts a conversation. It really helps you to have questions to ask somebody who you're getting to know. Also knowing that, in the beginning, a person might not know you well enough to tell you all of their story. And so that's why we have the assessment and Acuity done every 6 months. You're going to learn different things about people along the way. Things are going to change for folks, and it's really a place to capture all that. It brings all the information, or all of the information you have at the time, in one place to tell the story. And it helps people understand the tenant's needs, their history, and their experience. So, everything we do we carry with us our past. So it's helpful to know where somebody has come from to help them move forward. The Acuity Index provides guidance in developing a service plan. It helps kind of give a level of where people need some help, where they have some strong independence. And also it helps to talk about people who might want to think about moving on to an affordable housing option with no or limited case management. In some ways, it can measure a person's recovery in areas where they might need additional support if they're having if something's happening with their life that is causing disruption in an area that they may have done, had scored very highly before, not needing a lot of support services. It can also help supervisors distribute caseloads so that one person doesn't have everyone with high needs and another case manager has a person with very low needs. It really helps to kind of distribute and making sure that people have equitable caseloads. Also, if there are supervisors that carry a caseload, they might want to look at the cases they have and the number of people that they supervise so that they aren't overwhelmed and overworked. So I'm going to pause here just to see if any questions or comments. Okay. So general guidance about the assessment acuity, when is it due? So the initial is to be completed no later than 30 days after the person moves into the unit, and every 6 months after that. So as we said, there's going to be things that people, you learn about people over time, or things change over time. And so this is a place to capture that new information. And you can jot it down, like, once the first initial assessment is done and you find out different things, you can add it to the assessment later on and date it, or put it in notes and date it, so that you have a running list of things that are going on with folks. Who signs it? So the case manager and supervisor are required to sign it, and also to remember to date it. So, we look at, as I said, we look at when it was completed, and then the follow-up reports were completed. So it's important to have dates on those. How to complete it. So if a person is first moving in, you may have a lot of background information, other referral documents. You can start adding things in to the assessment before you even start talking with the tenant, right? So you might have something that has their social security number, their date of birth, their full name, those kinds of things, you can pre-fill those in, because we really don't want this to be sort of a checklist of asking people, sort of simple questions that you might have somewhere else. So it's okay to pre-fill out some of it. So you can use a combination of the documented information and what the tenant tells you to complete both the assessment and the acuity index. So the assessment starts, there's sections for each, both the assessment and the acuity, and the assessment has, I think, like 14, but they're, sort of carved out. One is the tenant's information. So as I said, pretty much demographics. In that section, we have also added the questions that are required for DDAP, so that people don't have to fill out two different type of assessments. So you can use this to fill out the DDAP, which is the DEMIS database that people are required to enter information.
I think, okay, did Alice lose connection?
I think she lost connection.
Uh-oh, okay. Give her a second. It looks like she's still connected. So give her a second to reconnect. Alrighty. Yeah, she may have to come out and come back in. So we'll give Alice a minute. Yep, so she may have to just come back in.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, did I get kicked out?
Here we go. Yeah, well, this is like the day of technology issues. Yeah, it's like, I think it kicked you out and then brought you back in.
You got frozen and then it kicked you out.
All right, so could someone tell me where I left off? Because I don't know when it stopped.
I think you had just started when you got frozen, Alice.
Just started?
Yeah.
No, you was talking about, the signature of the,
The-
who was signing and
Okay, so that was a little bit ago.
Mhm.
Was I on this slide, Brenda?
how to complete a
No,
government.
the next one.
This one?
Yeah, he wasn't too far after what I was just talking about, so.
Okay, so did you guys hear me talk about why it's important?
Start from
Okay.
there, let's roll.
All right, so sorry about that. I don't know what's happening today. As my niece would say, the wheels are coming off the bus, I guess, but here we go. So the assessment and acuity are important because they help start the conversation you're going to have with the tenant. It does tell not the full, but it starts to tell the story of the tenant from their own perspective. And it helps you guys to better understand their needs, their history, and their experience. Because everything we do, we bring our experience and our history with us. So it's important to know that. The Acuity Index provides guidance in developing the service goals. It helps assess a person's level of independence, where they might need more supports, where they might need less supports. And it also is a tool that can help people to determine whether they feel that they're ready to move on from permanent supportive housing to affordable housing without the case management supports. It can help distribute caseloads for supervisors, so that not one case manager has all folks who have high needs and one case manager has folks with low needs. both of those would probably not be good for the case managers who'd be working with the folks, right? So somebody who has all high need people might be very stressed out, trying to work with somebody, group of people with a lot of needs. And conversely, someone who's working with folks with very low needs might feel bored. And so, you don't want to have either one of those things happen. So I'm just going to buzz through this quick, just so it's all on the screen. So when is the assessment Acuity due? It's to be completed within 30 days after the person's moved in and 6 months after. The case manager and supervisor both have to sign it and remember to date it. And how to complete. So you can gather information from other referred documents, other documents you might have about the tenant, and of course, asking and talking with the tenant. And you can use both of the documentation that you have about the person and also what they tell you to do both the assessment and the Acuity. Excuse me. Excuse me. So the thing that we say about why it's 30 days after the person moves in, it's going to give you time to get to know the person. It's going to, for those of you who have seen the assessment and Acuity, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of documentation that we ask you to do. And it's a lot for someone to sit and kind of have to go through in one sitting. So we also know that, you're going to work with folks on an ongoing basis. So gather as much information as you can, as that they're willing to talk about, to fill out the documentation, but we don't want it to feel overwhelming to you or them to complete it. So that's why we give 30 days. I'm gonna just pause for a quick, if anybody has any questions or comments.
I'm sorry, are we going to see any examples of the form they use for the Acuity index and the assessment? I just want to make sure.
There are some slides with the Acuity. I don't think we have any with questions for the assessment itself.
Okay.
But we will go through the different sections of the assessment.
Okay.
So
Good.
we do, thanks for that question. We do, the first section is tenant information. So generally demographics. In this section, we have questions that are required in the DMIS data system, DDAP, so that all of the information that you might need for different data portals we try to capture it there. So we have some questions that are related to the DDAP, and then there are some that are related to the Management Information System, or HMIS. Then we talk about a person's housing history and information. So, where they're housed, information about their landlord, any history of eviction and that kind of thing would be captured here. Daily living skills challenges, so where a person might need some assistance, and this is helpful in filling out the Acuity piece of the document. Employment and education, so if a person's interested in getting employment, that's something they want to talk about on their service plan. It's a good place to have a lot of their history of where they were employed previously, or what their education is, if they need to, if they want to go finish getting a GED or a college degree, where they are in that process. We ask about medical and their health, and then we ask about behavioral health, including mental health services they might need, substance use, and trauma. And so we do have in the assessment a little sort of narrative question about the trauma piece, which we suggest is sort of a way to frame it so that people can opt out of answering, but also understand that obviously we don't want to re-traumatize somebody. So we ask that, even though we have it written in the document, it doesn't have to be said verbatim. So the sort of introduction to the trauma history is we're going to talk about things that you may have seen or experienced at different points in your life. You don't have to answer any questions or tell me anything you don't want to, and we can stop this part of the assessment at any time. We can also talk about any concerns you might have in this area. So, understanding we don't want to re-traumatize people, but, it may impact their daily living. It is a question we have folks ask, or questions. Again, if the person chooses not to answer them or says they don't want to talk about it, you can just in that document put that the person is not interested in talking about it at this time. I wouldn't, I don't think, saying that they refuse. I think it's just more of a comfort level for someone. But also, if people do talk about any trauma history that they've had and they want to get services for it, we do have a list of places that you can connect if the person does disclose and has said that they want some services. So there's a Demas Trauma Initiative website. There's also a link to the local mental health authorities, which may help folks working through their trauma issues. And then Demas training catalog does provide a trauma training. So just some links to some options if people do have trauma they want to work on. So then the next section is the financial resources and obligations. And in here, we talk about all financial resources the person gets and all financial obligations. So, wanting to build, if someone wants to build a realistic budget, you need to realistically know what they owe people. So we do suggest that if people have outstanding things that they owe to people that might not be of legal, it's not like a legal credit card or utility bill, but they still have to pay somebody some obligations, whether it's family, whether it's friends, gambling debts, whatever it is. To be able to build a realistic budget, you want to know everything. And so, in a housing first model, we understand that people might come with things that they are not always on the mainstream, like a regular credit card bill or utility bill, but they might have obligations that they want to pay. So in a non-judgmental way, we can talk to them about, realistic expectations of their finances. We ask about legal involvement, whether that's past legal issues that might resurface. So if someone's on probation, if someone has a court case that's coming up in the future. We also talk a little bit in this section about if there are families who have DCF involvement or child welfare involvement, if there's any legal cases that are coming up, because that might change their household, what their household looks like. You might have a woman who enters the building, enters your program as an individual, but she's going to be getting her children back through this. So you want to know that because the person might need a larger apartment, a larger voucher in the future. We talk about other services the person might be involved in. So that's a good place to, if you know that they're in services other places, to get a release of information if they're willing to share that, so you can talk with the other service providers. The same thing with natural supports. If people have natural supports that they want involved in their care, you can find out in this section, have them sign releases if they're interested in that, how much they want the people involved, where their community is. We talk about interests and hobbies. And this, people are not just their illness or not just the fact that they are experiencing homelessness. So we want to really be able to talk with people about interests and hobbies. That might be a way to begin a relationship with somebody who's more guarded, or, if a person says that they have nothing they want to work on, but if they have interests and hobbies that they'd like to be re-engaged to, that might be a nice way to have some engagement with them about some things that are not necessarily just about their they're experiencing homelessness or their behavioral health disorder or their substance use disorder. This could be a way to talk with somebody about things that aren't necessarily just the negative things that are impacting their lives. We talk about strengths and barriers to accessing resources or services. So, you know, if a person has a car, they don't have to live somewhere that's on a bus line, presumably. So this could be both a tangible strength and barrier or an untangible. So somebody who has a bachelor's degree who the last time they worked was maybe 6 months ago, that's a strength in trying, if they want to find further employment in that career, because they have the education, they have some experience in it. And then sections 13 and 14 are really any additional information that you've gathered that doesn't kind of fit neatly into the boxes of the other 12 areas. You can put it in there, and or there's a section for summary notes. Neither of those are required, but we do leave space in the assessment for folks to use that. If there's no information to be filled in there, we do ask that you put NA or you know, nothing noted. And for all of the assessment questions, we do want something written in each of the questions, even if the client doesn't want to talk about it or that you don't have the information, the client didn't have the information, whatever it is, you can put client does not know, client did not want to answer this question, just as long as it's completed with something. As we say, if it's not written down, we can't prove that it happened, right? So you just want to write down that you asked the questions, and it's not a requirement for you to get the answer, but it is, you know, we do want you to ask the question. So I'm going to pause here and let you guys either chat or raise your hand with any questions. Okay. I don't see any, so I'll move on. So some assessment frequently asked questions. Do I need to re-ask all of the assessment questions every 6 months? The short answer is no. So as you start to fill out your 6 months assessment and acuity, whatever in the assessment can be carried over into the next assessment. So their name isn't going to, in theory, probably change very much from 6 months to another. Now people do change their names. And so you might want to, if they do, or if they prefer to be called something else, make that change. Social security numbers don't often change. Date of birth doesn't change. So whatever information you know hasn't changed, you can put it into the next assessment. You don't have to ask all of them, especially anything about their history or their trauma if they've already answered it. Generally, that's not going to change very much. You know, of course, it can a little bit, but you can always, as I said, if you find things out during the 6 month intervals, you can also update in the chart so that you don't have to re-ask it if they've already disclosed things to you. Can I leave some sections blank? I just said that, so I'm even ahead of myself. We don't want any sections left blank. What if some information I include is incorrect? So, you know, I say this in all of my trainings. The first time you meet someone, they might not tell you everything. They might tell you some stuff. They might tell you, if you ask a question, they might tell you nothing about that. And so often, you know, the information might be a little skewed, and it takes time for people to build a relationship. So if you find that something wasn't presented in the same way the second and third assessments, you can always correct the information. You know, somebody could say when you first meet them that they don't have a substance use disorder, and then you know, 6 or 8 months later, you find out they disclose to you that they do have been using substances and it's becoming overwhelming to them, and they would like treatment or help with it, you can then change the assessment to say that, Alice disclosed that she has been, drinking a handle of vodka every day for the last 6 years. It's not that anything was wrong in the information that they gave you before. It's just now there's probably more of a level of trust. There's more of they may want to continue to work on anything that's having trouble in their lives. So this is a living document. You can always, if you find things that are different and more up to date, change them, put them in the information. It's we're working with people, and so there's a lot of different, how people feel and comfort level, and we just ask that you continue to update that so you have the best, most up-to-date information available. I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has any questions.
Just real quick, what was 4, 5, and 6?
Oh, on the assessment?
Yeah, assessment section.
4 is employment and education. 5 is medical and health. And 6 is behavioral health, substance use, and trauma.
Thank you.
Sure. So if folks feel it's kind of a quiet crowd, so I'm trying to liven it up here and get some questions in the chat or some conversation in the chat. So think about a time that you were assessed or somebody asked you a series of questions, maybe the first time you went to see a doctor, a specialist, and what did you like about it? What did they do to make you feel comfortable? What could they have done better? Anybody want to throw something in the chat? We can kind of have a conversation about it.
They shared something about themselves that was relatable.
Okay. I can't see your name, but could you tell us like kind of what it was that you don't have to disclose anything, but
Well, I'm just referring to, like, say someone is going to ask me some questions that might be probing, but they want to break the ice. So it's kind of like an icebreaker. They might say something about their kids or a hobby or something that they're interested in outside of work that, could connect. So something along that line.
Great. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We're humans and we're working with humans, and we don't want to, we don't expect that people will give all their family secrets away to their clients, but we do want to, show them that we're human and that we're asking questions that are really going to help us be able to help them. Anybody else? Anybody have a negative experience? I can think of I went to a doctor, and this is why we say, particularly when we talk about the trauma, is not to read right off the form, because I can remember the doctor was like, okay, so like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, they're not even looking at me. I don't feel like they're invested in what I'm saying. They're more invested in this document that they're trying to fill out. So, while you need to fill out the assessment and acuity, sometimes you can get as much information from somebody by just having a conversation with them and saying, I'm going to ask some questions, if you don't mind. After you answer them, I might write down some of the answers or take little notes. But I really do want to have more of a conversation with you so that it feels more natural. It feels like, and I'm so sorry, I can't see your name, but as the gentleman said, it's a way to kind of break the ice, make people feel more comfortable that you're asking in a way that feels like that you care about them.
It's Marcus. And
Marcus, thank you.
that's fine. One of the things that I've done in the past is I've made, when I know I have to ask an assessment, that, you know, the questions and the very flow of the questions is very tedious. I try to make myself so familiar with the, you know, the flow of the questions that I can put it in a kind of conversational way, so that it takes less of that sterile, you know, nature of the whole interview out of it.
Yep, exactly. Right. I mean, there's some questions, you know, you have to kind of social security number, there's no way around it, right? Like, but other things you can be more conversational about. Oh, somebody put something in the chat. I honestly can't remember when I was last assessed or asked a series of questions, much less how they did it. I think part of making it feel more conversational and human is also acknowledging, responding to their answers. Right. So I think both points are very well taken. You know, a lot of us don't get assessed all that much. And our clients probably feel like they get assessed a lot. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is to have a way that it feels less like an interrogation, or just that you're going through these series of questions and answers that they might not feel like, you know, I've answered these times, why do I have to keep answering them? So
Death by assessment.
I'm sorry, say that again, Marcus.
Death by assessment.
Exactly. And then Maya said, I think part of making it feel more conversational and human is also acknowledging and responding to their answers, right? So like if you're asking somebody a question and they say something to you that, you know, probably feels like they need a little support or empathy around, and you just blaze through it to the next question, that's not a great way to build a relationship, right? Like they might feel like they've just been left hanging. So I think those are really good points.
Or even like on a positive note too, like you can sort of build rapport by it. Like if someone is talking about a hobby, being like, oh, that's so cool. Like I love music too, or, you know.
Yep, exactly. I always, I love to tell this story. It was one of the case managers. He was working with somebody and, you know, they did the assessment, and in the hobbies and interests, the person said that they had always wanted to learn how to knit. And so they worked on, as part of the plan, was finding a knitting group so that the person could learn to knit. The person then also was, you know, had some anxiety and was apprehensive about going to meet a group that she didn't know. So the case manager went with her to learn how to knit. So I think those are really ways that you can, you know, if you have the time and the bandwidth to do that, it does show that you are interested in what they're saying, and it's supporting them in something that might be a little hard for them to take on their own. You know, eventually she met people in the knitting group, and she was able to form friendships and move, and, you know, the case manager didn't have to go anymore, but, you know, a byproduct of it was he supported his tenant, built a relationship with her. And he probably also learned how to knit a little bit, which is really great. So I think, you know, just sort of sometimes thinking outside of the box too can be really helpful. All right. My screen seems to be frozen, which is not great. Okay, there we go. So oh, there's a chat. So before we move on to the tips, Jay Edwards, I also believe in letting a client vent out everything they're feeling, because lots of times they just need someone to listen to. Absolutely. Sometimes we all just need someone to listen to us, right? So I think that that's good too, is to let somebody just let it out, and then you can regroup at a later date if they're not in a place to continue the assessment that day. Or you might get a lot of information from someone venting too, right? Like sometimes when you're on a roll, you just spill your guts and everything. So there's some information that might come out. So tips for the assessment. You know, we updated this training when we started to work from home a lot. So, you know, we really suggest, if you're not meeting with folks all that much in the office yet, is to conduct the assessments using video or in person, because you can pick up nonverbal cues. You can, see when people are fidgeting or uncomfortable with questions, or, this is a long assessment. You can kind of tell when someone's getting done with the questioning, and you might, want to wrap it up sooner rather than later. Do your homework, so get as much information as you can from any referral documents, stuff that might be in HMIS. I've said this a few times. You guys have repeated it back to me, so I know you're doing it. Is have a conversation. Don't say I'm here to do the assessment, or we're going to implement an assessment. You just want to get to know them and get to figure out ways that will help to support them, and be clear that the information is not going to be shared unless there's a signed release of information, or there's something you as a case manager are working on that you might need some assistance from your supervisor with. But really, this is information that you and the person are going to be working on as a team. So recently, I say within the last year or so, some changes to the acuity index of the assessment acuity. They were based on some evaluation studies and a pilot study we did in 2018 and 2020. And so we've rearranged the questions into 6 domains rather than the 4 that there are the 3 that used to exist. There's a new score range and instructions how to do those. And it's really to identify if someone is a high acuity, a medium acuity, or low acuity. And it helps to use this for people who might be ready to move on from supportive housing, whether they should stay in supportive housing for a shorter term, or really this right now is a long-term situation for somebody. And so the scores of the acuity index can vary over time too. People can be doing really well and then have a setback in some areas. So the idea of the acuity is not for it to always be on an upward trajectory. We know people struggle. We know, things influence a person's recovery. So it's natural for things to ebb and flow. The good thing about the acuity index is it might be able to help you look at patterns. If somebody's always scoring really highly in one area at a particular time of year, and then another time of year it's scored much lower, you might want to think about, are there things that impact why they're scoring lower in the one part of the year versus the other part of the year? Because again, all of us bring all of our history with us. If someone had a traumatic event, or if someone's parent passed away at a certain time of year and then they struggle with that, you can maybe build some more supports around that time of year for them. So it's really a tool to kind of be used to look at things over time, both historically and maybe building out some ideas for like a future support. So the acuity index has, as I said, 6 sections. So the first is the housing and lease. So it's talks about rent payments, utility bill payments, and the person's lease. And this is what it looks like. So the questions have a 4-point scale. We ask that new is the assessment that you're working on right now. Last is where they scored in the previous assessment. And then you'll see where it says service plan goals, active or deferred. So, a person who's new into housing or been there for 6 months, they might have a number of things that score fairly low on the assessment. Anything that scores a 0 or a 1, we'd like to have you talk about with the tenant as being part of a service plan. That being said, a person may have, I'll make up a number, 10 things that score a 0 or a 1 on the assessment. The expectation is not that all 10 things will be on a service plan. It's the expectation that the tenant can pick 2 or maybe 3 things to be put on a service plan to work on in the next 6 months based on those things that come up as a need. And the tenant is the person who chooses whether they're going to be an active service goal or a deferred service goal. So if it's an active service goal, you would check active. So say the person wants to make sure that their rent payment is paid on time and in full, you would check active. But then they don't want to work on a utility bill. They say, that's fine, I can handle that. Even though they may have scored a 1 or a 0 on it, you would just check deferred. And so then on the service plan, the thing you would put is their rent payments as being part of the service plan. I'm going to pause here and just see if that makes sense to folks or if there's questions around that.
Alice, I have a question. This is Angelo. I'm not sure why my camera's not working today. And I'm kind of speaking for Steve in McKinney House, where I was for like 11 years. The ACT Acuity Index, of course, mirrors the DEMIS Acuity Index. We carefully, over the years, we carefully mirror it for the most part. You know, there's some things that are different because we're dealing with people that are HIV positive. But a question that has always been interesting to me with rent payments, a lot of times in congregate housing, like a McKinney House, or either a resident that is moving into an apartment for the first time, and they were homeless for, I don't know, let's say 5 years. And so it asked the question, tenant has not paid rent for the last 6 months or has only paid rent on time. And so that would be, usually that would be a 3, right? Because we're not saying that that the tenant neglected to pay rent for 6 months. Or is it just an open question? Have they paid rent anywhere? Usually we score it as a 3 because they came in homeless and they've been homeless for 5 years. So I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Sure. Yeah. So that does feel like a 3 because you have no baseline by which you can answer that question. So, and the tenant may say, I'll be fine. I'll be fine paying my rent. And so to say, okay, we're not going to have that be a part of the service plan. We're going to give you a 3 because you have no, there's no close history of you paying or not paying rent. So let's give you the benefit of the doubt. When you reassess in 6 months and you find out that they've not paid their rent, or they've paid it very few times, that's why we have the new and the last, so that you can say, if they paid no rent over the last 6 months, you would give that a 0. And then there's a section in the assessment that you could then write like a little narrative, like if you want. And it could say, tenant had no baseline when they moved in, scored it a 3, over the last 6 months has not paid rent, therefore it's now a 0. So you can, sort of, that's why we leave a little space for narratives and things, so that things like that can be not explained, but if I get your case when you move to Bora Bora after winning the lotto, I would be like, why did it go from a 3 to a 0? And if I saw a little note, it would make it, would make a little sense. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Very helpful. I just want to make sure that's the way we've been doing it. I just want to make sure from your point of view that it's correct. So thank you very much.
Sure. And I see a chat, so I'm going to open that real quick. Could you repeat the portion regarding what and how gets deferred? Sure. So anything that scores a 0 or a 1, you should be talking with your tenant about whether or not they want that on the service plan. Again, there may be a lot of 0s and 1s for somebody, and we don't want a person to be completely overwhelmed with having 10 service goals. So you can say to the tenant, here's some areas where it seems like you might need some strength. What are 1 or 2 things that feel like a high priority for you? Whatever those 1 and 2 things are as a high priority, that would get checked as an active on the Acuity, because you're going to then put it on an active service plan. the other things that they are at this point choosing not to work on a service plan, you could put deferred. So I hope that makes sense. I'll just give you a minute to, if it doesn't make sense, put something in the chat, or if it does make sense, say yes. It's hard to do. It's hard with this on virtual because I can't see all of your faces and your reactions.
I got a question. So
Sure.
okay, let's say for sake of argument that day, that someone comes, we have a new resident coming into McKinney House. So basically when we do our initial assessment, we're gonna first fill out the column that says last, right? We're gonna fill out, it's like we're working from right to left. We're gonna go by the last, what they were assessed last time, or if they've already been here, what their last set was, and then we're gonna go with a new assessment, and then
So-
like 6 months later.
So if you're a brand new tenant, or you have a brand new tenant, and you're filling this out for the first time, all that would be filled out would be the new.
Okay,
And then you could just put in the last, like NA, because this is their first assessment.
okay.
Then in 6 months, when you meet with somebody in October, although I don't want to talk about October because I want to get to summer. If you meet with them in October, then you could put how they're being assessed at this moment would be in the new column. And then what was on the first assessment would go in the last. And then when you meet with them again next April, what was in October goes into the last, and what's in April 2023 would be in the new.
Okay, so, all right, so basically, okay, they come in, everything will be new and last will be NA. Then we're printing out a new acuity index 6 months later.
Yep.
What was in the new from the first assessment was gonna go in last, and then
Yep.
the new assessment will be in the new, and then so on and so forth. Got it.
Right, exactly. Yep. So over time, you'll have, a number of them in there, and it'll, like I said, that's what tells the story. That's where you can see if someone's doing well at a certain time of the year, and then not as well as other times of the year.
Mhm.
That's where you can see the trajectory, if it's going up, or if there's, ebbs and flows, and you can talk with folks about the ebbs and the flows, or I've noticed every April or every October, you seem to need more support around your depression. How can I help support that? Things like that. So you can really talk about what you're seeing in their whole story.
Thank you.
Sure. So the next section is arrears and debt. So really, we talk about rent arrears, utility arrears, and any debt that they might have. And you'll see that some of this is like tenant debt is greater than 50% of income, and tenant is unable to meet these obligations. We don't really expect you to have a calculator, right? To say like, oh, they owe, is that 50% or is that like 20%? It's really just to kind of get an idea of if a person has $200 a month coming in, but they owe their mom money from the past, and they owe utility arrears, and they owe X amount in rent, and they have a gambling debt that they are trying to pay off to somebody, and that money is, all those debts are $175 a month, and they're getting $200 a month. It might be hard for them to manage for an entire month on $25. So that's a way to kind of talk to somebody about, how do you want to work our debt? How do you want to work on paying the debts off? Is there a way we can apply for a utility arrearage payment to kind of clean up that debt? Or is there a way you can talk to your mom about paying less? So kind of things like that so it's not, we don't again expect you to have a calculator and say it's 50%, it's 75%. It's really just in general, a general idea of how much debt people have. Income and benefits. So a stable, consistent source of cash income, the benefits that they might have, and the employment that they may have or are seeking. And so consistent cash benefits is, something, a job, Social Security, saga benefits, something that comes at a consistent, regular basis. Benefits includes all benefits. So anything a person might be eligible for, if they're eligible for, or they think that they're eligible for Social Security, if making sure that they're on Medicaid, making sure that they have SNAP if they're eligible, that kind of stuff. And then employment is, the person is not employed, is able to work, but not seeking employment, or the tenant is not able to work and has not received disability benefits. So that's a way to kind of assess what it is that they might need to do. If they're not employed and they want to work, is that going to be something on a service plan? If they're not employed and they don't have disability benefits, and they can't work because of a disability, do you have to apply for Social Security disability benefits? So again, it's really ideas to think about what's going to be needed to help the person have a full existence and be able to meet their basic needs.
Hey, Renee, this is Marcus. Quick question
Marcus,
for you. Is the conference room upstairs going to be available on Wednesday at 10 o'clock?
Marcus, you need to mute. Okay. So the next section is health, which includes mental health, primary and any specialty health, a person's medication adherence, harm reduction, which we use in the global, substance use, gambling, risky behaviors, and connection to community and supports. So that's a bit of a little bit of a bigger section. So again, it all looks very similar. And again, anything that's like timed or percentage, it's all based on your best knowledge. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. And as I said earlier, there is a section in comments where you can add something in the comments like, I chose the 2 because, from all it is reported, the person does see their health, their primary health or specialty health provider at least 50% of the time. So it's really your best working knowledge of the person you're working with. Supportive services and resources, so any crisis intervention that may have happened in the last 6 months, their life skills, any legal issues, their mobility and transportation. So in the example earlier, I said someone had a car, so they might not need to live on a bus line. Well, maybe their car, there was an accident or something happened to it, and now it's not available to them anymore. And so they have to figure out a different mode of transportation that could be in there. And then making sure that they have a safe living environment. So, and the safe living environment doesn't necessarily mean, it says, there's been over 5 contacts with the police or landlord regarding disruptive activities or unsafe conditions in the last 12 months. That could be them or anybody else, right? So say somebody's living in a building where there's activity, the police are called on a regular basis. The person might not feel safe living there. And so while it's not their actions that are causing the police to come and make them feel unsafe, but others. And so, having that be an active service plan or an active goal that they would like to move to a safer location based on the fact that they're not in a situation. So some of it is really about them, but some of it can be about the environment in which they're residing. Here is section 5. We get a lot of questions on for people who work with individuals, and I'm making an assumption just based on knowing what I know about the supportive housing throughout Connecticut. I'm assuming most of you work with individuals, some work with families. We do ask that the section on parenting and child services be filled out for everyone in the program, including those people that don't have children or have children who rely on them. What we ask for people who have no children or no parenting needs is that everything is a 3. And the reason that we ask that they be scored on the 3 is because they don't have that as a need. It's not going to show up as something that will be on their service plan or something that they want to work on achieving because they don't have that need. Now, of course, that could change at any point, right? So we know people have children all the time, or we know that people, sometimes get custody of family members, or they get married and a child comes with the new spouse or the new partner that's moving in with them. So that's okay. Again, for anyone who does not have a child with them, the score should always be a 3. And can be changed when a child enters into if a child enters into the situation. So some Acuity Index frequently asked questions. The tenant I'm working with doesn't have children. How do I score? Shout out what you think the answer is.
3.
Everyone, 3, yes, exactly. I don't know whether a tenant has benefits and they aren't sure either. What should I choose on the Acuity Index? You can score them as not having benefits because you're going to need to probably do some work to determine whether they have benefits. And so you don't want it to be a 3, not finding out, and then find out later, 6 months later, that when they're hospitalized, they have no Medicare. You want to be able to work on finding out if they have benefits. If they do, in the next assessment, you can score it as a 3 because they've gotten the benefits. I don't know the exact number or percentage. What should I put on the Acuity Index? Again, we talked about using your best educated assessment with the information you have available. These forms are updated every 6 months. So, there's always opportunity to update anything that you might have learned along the way. What if the tenant refuses to engage with me to complete the Acuity Index? So the Acuity Index, the tenant doesn't need to sit with you to complete it. You can get some information you can fill it out based on the information you have, based on the information you get from outside resources. So if a landlord calls you and sends you a letter saying that, Joe hasn't paid his rent in 6 months, Joe's not sitting with you to do the assessment, but that's probably an area where he needs some assistance. He's going to score a 0 or 1 because he hasn't paid his rent, and you have the verification of that. So if you guys could either take yourselves off of mute or answer some in the chat, what are some strategies that you've used to engage people in completing the assessment and Acuity Index?
That's an easy question and a hard question at the same time for me. As you state, when you first, it's a little easier on the second and the third and the fourth one, but that first one is usually, as you stated, understanding and reading as much of the referral as I can, and then getting to know them within those first couple of days, so that, I'm asking the appropriate, as best as I can, questions. And so that, as the gentleman said earlier, so it's not just reading, questions, but, actually engaging in conversation. So I find that the more I know about an individual, the easier it is to go to do an Acuity Index. The less I know, the more it feels like, especially that first time, the more it feels like the question and answer thing. So the first one is usually a little bit more difficult. After 6 months, we kind of get a feel, especially in McKinney House in a congregate setting versus someone, that's living in the community in their own apartment. In a congregate setting, you're seeing someone all the time. So that's my answer.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
I would say one strategy that I think is real good is motivational interviewing. Just because, like Angela was stating, you gotta kind of make it like a conversation. And some people, with their mental health and everything going on, they don't want to feel like they're just sitting down and just being asked questions. So if it's more like a conversation, they'll feel more comfortable going through that process.
Exactly. Maurice said that to me, where the people where they are, which is part of motivational interviewing, allowing the client to answer only what they're comfortable with. That's Taylor. That's a really good point too. Some other strategies people have used is when you're having a conversation with someone, you don't have to necessarily sit in their apartment or in your office to do so. You can go to the park if it's nice out. You can go grab a cup of coffee. Ways to make people feel more at ease and not like it's, again, like a checklist or like required to do these things, but really getting to know the person. So, if a person wants to, if you're in the car with a person driving them to an appointment or something, you can ask some questions that you can then bring back and answer on the document. So anytime you're engaging with the person, you can gather information and gather some of the stuff you might use to complete the Acuity index.
So I have a question. This is William.
Sure.
Yeah, so is it okay to do this index because it's a very long form to fill? Is it okay to do it in 2 or 3 sections?
Absolutely. We really actually encourage it to be done in 2 or 3 sessions so that people don't feel, including you guys, don't feel overwhelmed in asking all of it, right? And to be able to use it as a tool to build the relationship with somebody so that you're not feeling overwhelmed, they're not feeling overwhelmed. And it's a natural conversation that you might get more information in rather than just like kind of reading the questions all at once. And it is a long document. So everyone's going to get tired. We got tired writing it. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, because our clients, because of the mental illness, a lot of them will not be able to sit one place for an hour, or hour 30 minutes to go over all the questions and what have you. So I think it's always better to break it into pieces, and then they can come by and then just answer questions and stuff like that.
Yep, exactly. Marie said, make the client feel more comfortable by listening and showing interest. Yep, exactly. So you want people to feel heard. I think that's when people open up a lot more is when they feel like they're being heard and responded to and understood. So all great suggestions. Thank you. So scoring and interpreting. Each score, as I said, a 0 or 1 indicates that they have a support need, and a 2 or 3 indicates that they have some strengths and some stability. So in the document, as we said, all the news should be filled out, and then you'll get a subtotal on each section. The subtotal scores will help identify an overall level of service need. So whether a person has a lot of needs that need to be met, or that they have not as many, and things could be for a person with low acuity index, you might talk about moving on. For a person with some high acuity, figuring out what are the, like I said, 2 or 3 things that they want to address in the next 6 months. So that they don't feel completely overwhelmed with, scoring low in a lot of areas, right? So you want to be able to have people have successes. So the way it is scored is that all domains fall in the low range. Other housing options within the community should be considered for a short-term goal. The candidate is the client is a candidate for moving on. And the moving on policies, operations from Department of Housing, people need to have filled out the assessment and acuity and have that as part of the referral for someone to be moving on. So they do need to have that, the assessment and acuity working with the policies for the Department of Housing moving on. The person scores one or more domains in a medium range, but has no domains in the high range. Sounds like supportive housing is where they need to be right now, but it could affordable housing could be a long-term option as they move through their recovery and areas start to get scored higher. That might be something more of a midterm range. And then a person has one or more domains falls in the high acuity range. The person really needs to stay in supportive housing. So again, somebody who's first moving in may fall within this, and as time goes on, they may move, or people may have very high needs that over time, that you're working on them. It's just taking some time to get better, or there have been things that impact their acuity and things that remain high, and that's okay too. That's why there's a whole cadre of options for people in supportive housing, whether it's the single site, whether it's scattered site, or whether it's moving on, so that hopefully there's not anybody we're missing or falling through the cracks. So we do have a activity we'd like you to do. Kaya, can you jump in about what folks will need to do for the excuse me, for the breakouts?
Yes. So as most of you know, once you go into breakouts, you can no longer see the screen. So what we're going to recommend is to have folks do like a screenshot or take a picture of the current screen right now where it has activity 1, so that you can have the instructions in front of you once we go into breakouts. That way there won't be any issues of folks not remembering what the prompt was. So if folks, give you a second to take a screenshot of this, or just take a picture on your device of this current screen right now of activity 1, and then you'll use that once you're in your breakout room, so you'll know what the prompt is that you're discussing with your group.
And actually, I just clicked ahead because I think you'll need to take a picture of screen as well. Because what we're going to ask you to do is, based on this case study of Miss B, we're going to ask you to fill out the housing portion of the acuity based on the information that you have on Miss B. So I'm going to leave this up for another like 15 or 20 seconds. Then I'll go to the other screen where folks can take a picture of that or screenshot. And then I think we'll break out into breakout rooms. There we go, for a few minutes, and have you guys discuss in a smaller group the case study, and then filling out the assessment, the acuity. I keep screwing these words up today. The acuity, and then we'll come back, and then we'll put you back into breakout rooms, because once we go through the acuity answers, then there's a second part of the breakout rooms. So now I'll leave this up for about 30 seconds so folks can take a screenshot or picture of this.
Awesome.
Kai, we could probably do the breakouts unless anybody wants to like shout out that they're not ready yet. I think we probably are good to have folks.
Yeah, I
going.
got too much pictures on my phone. I'm literally trying to take pictures off now so I can.
Oh, no.
Well, here's the hustle.
Stevenson, you can sniff it.
And I will say also, there's going to be other people in your group. So if most people take a picture, at least someone in your group should have the prompt.
Yeah.
Because I'm not able to do it.
Okay, I'm sure someone
Yeah,
else can help.
Yeah, I was gonna say same thing as Kaya. Someone else in your group, I'm sure, will help you out, Stevenson.
Awesome. Are you ready? I can open the rooms up now.
Yeah, I think good.
And as a reminder, how much time are we giving them in the breakout rooms, Alice?
I would say 3 to let's do 4 minutes, because then there's the second activity as well. So
Okay.
guys, get through as much as you can. I think this is really just sort of like a practice at it. So don't make yourself give yourself heart attacks. We're gonna come back, regroup, go over the answers, and then we'll have you do the second
All
piece.
right, then.
So, can somebody from group 1, either in the chat or take themselves off of mute, let us know how you filled out this section for Miss B?
From which group? I'm sorry.
Group 1?
I don't remember which group I was in. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
All right,
if
well,
I was in either.
you're talking, so you get to tell us.
Okay, well, based on the scenario you gave us, as far as the rent payment, utility bills, rent arrears, utility arrears, and safe living environment, there was not much to work with to get a baseline. So she got a 3 on all of those in the new section. But on the last one, lease include leases, or if tenant moved, it said tenant has been in supportive housing less than 12 months or has held a lease less than 12 months, which covers both a congregate housing setting and if they're out in the community living in their own apartment. And based on the information you gave us, it said that she had recently moved into supportive housing, which gives the feeling that it was less than 12 months. So we went with a 0 on the very last one. So everything else was a 3, but a 0 on the last one, meaning that if she agreed, that should be part of her case plan also.
Sounds good. How does everyone else feel?
I basically have the same answer as Angelo.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah, I got nothing else to add.
Anybody else? Okay. So yeah, based on you got a little bit of information about Miss B, nothing telling you she owes any back bills, she's been late on anything. So I think that that's right. And I think that it's right that, recently a good assumption is that it was less than 12 months and that that's something that she might want to put on her service plan. I don't like when my clicker doesn't move me. So based on the little bit of a case study, you can also maybe look at her healthcare issues. And we did have a little bit of information on those. We're not going to put you in breakouts to talk about her medical issues, but there are some things that you could probably have gotten from the description to fill out her health section. What we are going to do is have you go back out into a breakout room, and based on these statements, see if you feel like you could complete a little bit the beginning of what would be on a service plan for Miss B. So when meeting with the case manager, Miss B stated that she doesn't want to get kicked out of another apartment. And she's also stated that her back pain makes it really hard for her to concentrate on other things. And she really just wants it to go away. So let you guys take a minute to take a screenshot of this, and then go into the next breakout rooms and just kind of frame out what you think would be some service plans for Miss B.
Alrighty. I'll give folks a minute or so to get activity 2, and then I'll put us back in breakout rooms.
Thanks, Kaya.
No problem.
So, in the interest of time, if anybody could unmute or put in the chat, did you see how some of the things that were in the case study and on the assessment could help you to fill out a service plan? Anybody have any thing that they thought they would put on their service plan for Miss B?
I mean, I would say she would definitely need a red payee.
And now you wanted that on her service plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would say her back pain, because she's dealing with a lot of medical issues. So focusing on, helping her manage, making sure that she gets to her doctor's appointments on time. Also communicating with the doctor's office, having her sign an ROI, so you can have that TCM in there. And then we were also talking about just going into depth questions, because we're not sure why she's stating that she doesn't want to get kicked out of another apartment. So we want to also either communicate with the landlord and property management to make sure that she's up to date with her current lease and everything.
Great.
I agree with Stephen, because evidently her back pain is probably causing her not to work. That's why she keep getting kicked out of the apartments. I'm just putting in the assuming part. So like he said, I would focus on her health and getting that straight now, and that way she can hold on to her job and then, be able to work and pay her rent.
Yep. Yep. So you can see how sometimes one part of a person's life can impact other parts, right? Like, so if she's in a lot of pain, she might not be able to work. And then, have her limited income that may not be able to pay her rent, et cetera. And so Maurice said she would get a doctor, then apply for Social Security disability. This way she does not lose her housing. Maya agreed and said she may also need help applying for Medicaid before she can see a doctor, right? So you don't, the snippet we gave you, you don't know whether or not she has applied for Social Security, whether she has all her benefits. So both of those things I think are good things to kind of, if you had the fuller acuity, you could determine whether or not she needed help with those things, or how to help if she's done the Medicaid or has started to apply for Social Security. So just,
And-
oh, go ahead.
And sometimes, one of the things that you were explaining at the beginning is about the conversation piece of having with the client or with the resident. The rent could very well be paid up and be on time. And you didn't really say as to why she was fearful of being kicked out of another apartment. We don't, the back pain, that definitely needs to be addressed, but we don't know if something's being done to her, or if she's being a nuisance there, or I'm just making it up, or if the back pain is a result of her not going to methadone, and therefore now she has back pain, but her rent is totally paid. But you just never know. You got to have the conversation to fully understand the situation.
Yep. And so there were 2 quotes that she said, sometimes my arrow buttons work and sometimes they don't. So she doesn't want to get kicked out of another apartment, and she really just wants her back pain to go away. So those could be things that you put on her actual service plan. I don't want to get kicked out this time. And then some things that to look, Miss B will pay her portion of the rent by the 10th of each month for the next 6 months of service plan. And then you guys will meet together twice a month to develop a monthly budget. She'll have a rep payee by February. So here are some of the steps that can happen to help her not get kicked out, using her own words. I want my back to feel better. Miss B will find a doctor she likes. How will that happen? Case manager, Miss B will create a list of local doctors. You'll review the list. And then you'll work together to set down, to schedule an appointment. So you can see how the big global issue for her were these 2, the not getting kicked out and feeling her back pain. You can use on the assessment, she may have scored all 3s because you don't have a baseline, but that's still something she wants to work on. Her making sure her rent payment is done. That's how, even though it's a 3, can be on her service plan as something she's interested in doing.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I really want to know. I don't want to get kicked out this time. Is that a quote, or is that an actual goal?
That's her quote, right? So
Okay.
that's the goal she wants. We say that we'd like service plan goals to be in the tenant's own words. And so she doesn't want to get kicked out. That's her goal. And then you break it down into the interventions and steps to not have that happen. But the ultimate goal is what she wants.
Is that a housing goal, or is the goal actually, I don't want to get kicked out this time? I'm just trying to understand.
So that, it probably is framed as a housing goal. There doesn't necessarily on service plans have to be a housing goal just because she's in a housing program. But that could be considered a housing goal because she doesn't want to lose her housing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Demas doesn't require that there's specific types of goals on service plans. It really is what the tenant wants to work on. We do get that question a fair amount. So I just want to be clear. It's not our expectation that every person has a housing goal. So some long-term and stable tenants will score 2s and 3s on all areas of the Acuity Index. You can still, as we said, with Miss B, she scored a 3 on her rent payment, but it was still something she wanted to work on. So you can have 2s and 3s on a service plan if it's something the person wants to work on. Or you can create different goals based on tenants' interests and aspirations. So again, doesn't necessarily need to be a service plan, doesn't always need to be housing focused or behavioral health focused or medical health focused. It can be, the example I used earlier, the person who wanted to learn how to knit, that could be a goal if that's what they want to work on right now. Some people may be willing to consider moving on from supportive housing, and some will want to stay. So I think it's really just kind of talking with the tenant, talking to make sure that that they know that that's an option for them. It can be an option now or in the future. Really kind of maybe working with them about what makes them apprehensive about moving away from the service aspect of supportive housing into just affordable housing, or they can work on goals again, that are not necessarily behavioral health or housing related, something they may want to obtain or achieve. So volunteering, taking a class, getting a car, those can all be part of a service plan for somebody. So the acuity area addressed, or the non-acuity area addressed. So like what it is that the person is, this is for the service plan. Can everyone mute while they're not speaking in the training? Thanks. So the goals are the destination. That's the person center. That's in the tenant's own words, like what the destination is. The objectives are what's going to happen, how you're going to break it down into smaller pieces, steps to get to the goal, and then the interventions are how you're going to do it. So the calling, making a list of 10 doctors in the area, calling the doctors to make an appointment. Those are the hows to get to the destination. And there's a larger 2-hour service plan specific training that you guys, if you haven't taken it, it is through the catalog, and you can sign up for it. I don't think it's happened in this training catalog yet, but the training catalog. Oh, it was just done?
Yep.
Okay.
We did do. Yep.
So next semester you can take it. There are certain trainings that are, as you know, core trainings, and we offer them in every catalog, and service plan is one of those. So, we've been doing supportive housing in Canada for a number of years, over 20. And so some success stories, which I think are really, I love to hear from clients and the people who use the training tools that we provide. High acuity tenants go on a review list so we can follow them better. Have they moved? Are they in the hospital? What are complicating risk issues? So that was by a supervisor. So, there are ways to help the high acuity, the index helps people to kind of quantify how often they might need to see somebody or check in with them. I have a tenant who pays all his bills but can't boil water. I don't know if I would have caught that without the assessment. So, somebody maybe really have some skills in one area, but of some areas where they need some strength in others, just based on, their talents, their skills, what they've learned over the years. So these are ways, the assessment and acuity are ways to kind of find that information out. Tenants have been through so many transformations with the acuity index. We see incremental steps and little changes are huge. Using the acuity index, the tenant and the case manager decide what needs to be worked on together. That was from a tenant. Using the acuity index, everything is in my own words, and we're talking about goals every month. After 10 years of permanent supportive housing, we showed a tenant how high their scores were and have been able to talk about how safe they are. The tenant is getting a Section 8 and is moving on and has been very successful. So you can see that, the tools can help people see their own growth, see their own skills, see the things how far they've come. Sometimes, as somebody said that the director said, sometimes steps are really small and incremental and you might not see them unless you turn around and look at the whole staircase that they've ascended or descended. So I think it's really important to kind of be able to use these tools to help work with the tenant and really share what you see in them through these lenses. So as promised, it is 11:51, but I do want to leave room for questions, comments, or feedback. Also, there is a evaluation that we ask folks to fill out after the trainings. We really do want to see that your feedback, your comments, your questions, any information you want to give us. We read the evaluations. This helps us frame out the assessment and acuity I'm sorry, this helps us frame out the training catalog and try to make trainings better or more specific to the needs you guys have. So we really do, in the evaluations, please fill them out as completely as you can. And if Kaya, I'm going to check the chat. Kaya put the evaluation in the chat so folks can fill that out. I'm going to stop talking to see if anybody has questions or comments. And with no questions or comments, you guys can fill out the evaluation.
Do you mind going back to the last two slides, I think? Not the last one, the one before that or after. That one, yes. Here, 1 second. I just wanted to take a look at it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And we're gonna get a copy of the slides.
Yes. Kaya will send out the slides and the certificates of attendance. I don't see any questions in the oh, no, I fibbed. Oh, Kaya said the attendance and slides will be in about 2 weeks. You should receive them. Thanks, Kaya. So once you filled out the evaluation, I don't see any questions in either the chat or folks coming off of mute or raising their hands. So once you filled the evaluation, feel free to exit the training for the day. I, again, really appreciate you guys coming out today. And I appreciate all the information you put in the evaluations. As I said, we do read them and use them to help frame out other trainings or to make the trainings that you've been to a little bit better, hopefully, a little, any suggestions you have to make them better. That's what the evaluations are for.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.